Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 18th, 2025 edition of the Technical Advisory Council meeting for the Confidential Computing Consortium. We are an open and collaborative community whose goal is to accelerate the adoption of confidential computing in open source communities. And everybody here is welcome to give their feedback on how we can do that better. We also abide by the Linux Foundation's antitrust policy, and you can read more about that at linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. All right, so today our primary topic is the Verizon annual project review, and we'll also hear an update on ARM's ecosystem OKR by Paul, and then we will discuss Ming-Shen and TikTok's proposed research fund. I believe it's already been discussed at the governing board level, so Mike can probably confirm that. And yeah, so we can have a technical discussion here because it was supposed to happen in the last two calls, but those were canceled. And yeah, so that's on deck today. So we don't have any topics for that we need to vote for, but here are the premier member representatives who have voting rights. I'll quickly do just check to see who's present. Nathaniel's on PTO, so he's not here. I see Catherine, so thanks, Catherine, for joining. I see Paul. Thank you, Paul. I don't see Wu Yong Zhang. We have Simon here. Thanks, Simon, for joining. I don't see either Henry or Kevin. I don't see Alec either. So we don't have Henry and Alec. I see Fritz. Thanks, Fritz. And now, if you can see, there's a new name next to Fritz. You might have read that before. So for those who are not aware, Dan is now at NVIDIA. So he's currently undergoing onboarding. He is expected to be back for the next call, and he will continue to be chair, just wearing green now. I'm here.
Just sorry, if I may just say briefly, I think I've mentioned it before, but to be clear, Dan was voted in as a person, not as a company rep, and so it's okay from the point of the CCC and from he's been clear about it as well for him to continue as our chair.
Yes. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so Ming-Shen is here. Thanks, Ming-Shen, for joining, and I do not see Bob. So we do have quorum if there is a topic that requires voting, but we don't have any on the agenda today. All right. So now we are at the part of the call where the new members are encouraged to introduce themselves. So if you're new on the call, or if if you're joining for the second time, then we encourage people to at least introduce ourselves twice, because if people are comfortable with knowing who you are, what you work on, where you're from, that usually leads to more productive discussions. So I'm going at the list of names, and I see a few new ones. So yeah, if you are joining for the first or second time, feel free to go off mute and introduce yourself.
So there's a thing from Jeff here who says that he has no microphone, so he can't introduce himself, but he's from NSA Research.
Yes. Hey, Jeff.
Hello.
My name is Victoria. I'm from InfoSec Global, which is a key factor company. So the key factor does Bouncy Castle and things like that. And I'm mostly just interested to see what's going on and learn a bit more about the space.
Great to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hey,
Victoria.
everyone.
Yeah.
I'm Caroline. Oh, sorry. This is not my first time, but I hadn't joined in a few months because I went on maternity leave. So this is my first time since I've been back, and I work on
Congratulations.
the operating system team. Thank you, in Microsoft, specifically on confidential computing projects.
Great to have you back, and congratulations.
Excellent. We now have an outstanding action, I think, to try and move on the project adoption that you may be able to help with. I don't know where we've got to with that, so that would be maybe something we can work with you on. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
I'm
believe.
working with Rian offline on that.
Perfect. You're already on it. That's great. I thought that might already be happening, but that means we can leave it in your 2 sets of capable hands. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. So for people who are not aware, this is the OpenHCL project, I believe. Yes. So Caroline presented back in February, and yeah, so we're very happy to have you back, and yeah, the CCC will be very happy to have the OpenHCL project on board. Okay, so I see more people are trickling in. That's wonderful. You can always introduce yourself later in the call if you have a question on the presentations, and that's completely fine. So I'm going to proceed to the next slide, which is old business. So as I mentioned on the agenda slide, the previous 2 meetings were canceled because we did not have enough topics. So there's been quite a big gap. We are meeting after 6 weeks. And that's okay. But one of the things I would like to discuss going forward is how do we fill the where we don't have to fill the agenda, but if there are things that as the TAC we should be driving, then we should still meet even if it's a shorter call. And Dan had a proposal on getting more engagement from some of the members, so I'll talk about it in the end of the call. Okay. The other thing that happened in the last 6 weeks was the DStack project proposal. It got 8 votes, so it was approved. And congratulations to the DStack team on getting approved. And Rian, do you have any updates on whether they have already submitted the required documents? Like, are we in the process of onboarding them?
They have reviewed the documents, and their feedback is everything seems in order to sign from their side. So the next step is we need to take it to the governing board for a vote.
Okay, excellent. Right, and then
And we have a governing board meeting next week. So if we could add that to that, that'd be great, please, Rian.
Yes,
next week.
we will do that.
Thank you.
And the glossy topic was deferred, so don't listen to that. All right. So there are a couple of announcements. So I have a couple, and then if Mike or Rian, anybody have any else, please feel free to add to them. So one of them is that there is another mentorship from the Verizon project that is now live. So again, thank you, Thomas, Yogesh, and Sergey for donating your time. This is, I believe, Verizon's 3rd mentorship, which is amazing. They're started submitting, and this is a really good update. The second announcement is that the compliance page is now live. So thank you to Angela, Dan Brown, and others who worked on this. We now have a singular space on the confidential computing website where adopters, customers can find compliance-related updates and documentation. Are there any other announcements from the program team or from Mike?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so we can jump right into the first topic of the day, which is the annual project review for Verizon by Simon. So I'm going to stop my share and
yeah, sharing now. Okay, can you confirm when you can see that?
Yep, we can.
Marvelous. And can you hear me okay?
As
we can.
well as ever.
Oh, marvelous. Okay. That's one of those shout if you can't hear me scenarios. Okay. Perennial, so Project Verizon, our annual review. My perennial reminder that the correct pronunciation is Verizon. And there's lots of videos out there, but are for the winemaking term. Right. So from the original project submission, the 2025 deltas are quite low, really. No changes to the original submission details. We've used no budget, which was a bit of a shock, so we'll have to try and work harder on that.
Please do.
Yes, sandbox level is still appropriate given where we are, and we have slightly improved the OpenSSF best practices. I think we're at like 97% before. We're now fully passing, and we're even contemplating the next level. Please just shout if you want me to stop or any questions anytime. Technical progress, going through the code base. So there's support for multiple attestation schemes. I think we had most of those last year. The major delta on that one is Intel TDX. Is nearly complete. It turns out Intel's documentation is not perfect, but we are working with them to narrow down some of the differences there. Still largely a Golang based project, but there is increasing use to Rust, and in many cases we have components implemented in both Rust and Go. For deployment, historically the original deployment was container-based one. Last year we introduced the native service deployment. There have been some improvements on that native deployment just to make it a little bit more flexible and a little bit more robust. There is now a canned AWS service deployment. That's not necessarily meant to be a particular an automatic endorsement of AWS, but it's a typical. This is how you might deploy on a hyperscaler with appropriate scripting, designed as an exemplar for that. And there is an RPM build for the services element contributed by Oracle. All the documentation is now automatically rolled up into a book. So there is a single book. And apologies, I should have put the URL on there for the book, but it's on the front page of the organization, just to make it a little bit easier to pull everything together. In terms of RAT standard stuff, there are new implementations through here of CMW, the device assignment, the forthcoming device assignment 8, CoSAV I'll talk more about later. The CoRIM spec, the generator and verify aspects of that are underway. That's proving very complicated, but it's under there. And the last two, the Python implementation of EAR and provisioning of signed CoRIM and checking of the signature on CoRIMs were mentorship projects included in there. So we've done 2 mentorship projects here. And there's also a preliminary implementation or preliminary prototype of RATSD up on in its own repo. Any questions about any of that? Okay. Standard stuff. We continue to keep close track of the work in particular the RATS working group, but also some TCG stuff. Lots of work on CoRIM and tweaking implementation works as CoRIM has evolved. We have implementations of EAR for attestation result normalization. A lot of work on that. Prototyping for the developments within attested TLS as that has progressed. That now has its own workgroup stream. And just general evolution in RATS architecture and media types, and in particular CMW. New for 2025 in endorsements is the CoServe proposal, which is under working group adoption call. CoServe being a conveyance data model and interaction model for how to for a verifier to interact, or anyone to interact with a supply chain in order to get endorsements and reference values and things like that. And increasingly we have seen Verizon referred to as the RATS verifier, because it's typically if you have a RATS draft or something, the first place you're going to find it implemented is as a component inside Verizon. And reminder that
So we're
Verizon
basically saying is a pest control thing. Is that what we're saying?
Say that again. Sorry, I missed that.
Saying that Verizon is pest control. It's a RATS verifier. It sounds like
there you go.
Control.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what you do with the right grapes. You're filling them up rats. And a reminder there that Verizon is deliberately a grouping of components which you pull together as relevant for your attestation needs or your verification needs. GitHub, taking through the stats for the organization. Now 51 individual contributors, up 15 this year. Over 21 organizations, which is up 6. There's a logical split in the community between people looking at sort of the nature of doing attestation verification, which roughly falls into the services and allied repos. The CORIM group, which is very concentrated on generation of artifacts that support the supply chain, and GoCozy, which lives with us for historic reasons. But generally speaking, a nice spread of contributors, stars, and forks on that. So there were 243 PRs merged in the last year, around 119 issues, 219 stars, and 138 forks so far. Forks always worry me, but yeah, they come back. Mike.
So do you have any figures on the affiliations of contributors and maintainers? I know that can be difficult for GitHub, but it's always interesting to find out.
We not automatically from GitHub. We have got a list. Actually, Thomas, see you on. I think you showed me a list the other day where I don't know if do we have Thomas? That we do have a list.
I'm here. I do have a list. If you're interested, I can share
pull
it.
it up later on. Yeah,
it's important, because one of the things that we like to encourage as part of the governance is a breadth of containers of contributors and maintainers in projects, because it's good for succession planning and just general health, project health. So
agree, and that's why we report organizations on here as best we can from the stats. I'll let Thomas pull up the magic list, things like that. Anything else on stats? No. Okay. Community, we have weekly meetings which are actively attended, and we have multiple organizations who show up regularly, mostly commercial, some academic as well. We've completed 2 elementary projects, and as we heard at the top of the meeting, the third one's just kicking off. There are live deployments inside Oracle and inside Linaro, which are being used for a variety of purposes. Those ones we're aware of actively as a services deployment, but the CORIM tooling, some of the repos are dedicated to tools, for example, to generate CORIMs or to verify them, etc., stuff like that. And that tooling is in active use in various vendors. You can see Coakley referenced in various pieces of documentation. The project was subject to an academic paper, which was very nice to see. It's called Standard-Based Remote Attestation, the Verizon Project, which is emphasizes the adoption of the standards, and says it's very promising for future use or something, or expansion. There have been the Verizon project has been the main subject or a significant part of presentations in various forums this year. That continues to. There are including to get some invitations we can't satisfy on that. Anything else in the community? No. And lastly, roadmap. We don't work to tight dates, but these sort of work on themes. These are the areas in which are going to be, subject to implementation as a focus. So CoServe, there is already some prototyping work of CoServe within the project, and that's that will see a lot more work on endorsements and reference value distribution. Once those values have arrived at the verifier, we are conscious that the life cycle management in the provisioning aspect, or the provisioning store in the Verizon project, is not strong enough. And so that will see some work to have more, more control over the life cycle and the integration and identification of the relevant values for that. And there is some work, mostly tracking. There's a conversation starting off in RATS, which tracks some work we had already looked at, which is interactions either within a single verifier or between verifiers to work on to solve the problem when you have compounded testers, more complex systems, which when the user of that system is says, "Can I have attestation, please?" That actually what you're talking to is you're essentially talking to multiple supply chains. And
so there is some discussion of that in a variety of places, Simon, including the attestation work group. And I think the TWI as well. As long as you guys are plugged into that, that's good. But I just want to check that you're aware.
Yeah. Hopefully with everything, but so there is, there are some things that have been done in the past within Verizon which support that, and we're tracking that work and working out what it means in terms of actual implementation items. And we did talk about having a new logo, but we haven't satisfied ourselves on one yet. Are there any questions? Thomas?
Oh, yeah.
So regarding Mike's question about coordination with the attestation SIG TWI, and yes, that's a double yes and a triple yes, because we are also dealing with that in the context of the RACS working group. So we are fully synchronized.
I thought you probably were, but I just wanted to raise it and make sure it was recorded. So that's perfect. Thank you. Good. I have some other questions, however, if I may.
Far away.
So the first set was it boils down to the fact that it sounds like people are beginning to deploy these and possibly in actual production, and which is fantastic news. I mean, first of all, to say that. So the first question is, if that's the case, you should be thinking possibly about graduating to the next stage of the project lifecycle within the LF and with the CCC. So that's something to think about, because that is kind of the key thing. If it's being deployed and used by people, then you should probably consider that. And so the first question is, have you thought about that? And if so, why have you decided not to, and all those sorts of things? So question one, please.
Yeah, I think we don't know. I think we've not. No one has it in a sort of, at the moment, in a business critical deployment, which I've considered being sort of much more the relevant point. That may come soon. So we've actually been talking to, it's been interesting as sort of the deployment in Oracle has evolved. They are running up against sort of the sensible compliancy questions within their rollout group, and there have been some changes in the project to reflect that. And yes, I think when they get a bit more grown up, I think then maybe that's appropriate. But we haven't discussed it in detail.
Okay, so that leads me on to my next set of questions, which is, given this is, if it does get adopted by anybody, it is business critical, because it's got to be a major point of trust for any system that they're doing this. And so I wonder if you've done stuff like think about threat modeling, fuzzing, attack surface work, all of those sorts of things. And you mentioned you are moving stuff to Rust. Is that for safety or just because that's what people are doing? And it's really about the security of the project itself, because of the code. And then, of course, as you did talk about the life cycle of the project and releases and stuff, which I was very pleased to hear about. But I just wonder if you could give us a bit more about that, please.
No, that's fine. And as for the language choice, the original choice of language was something that was a managed language, and at the time, Rust was not mature enough. There weren't enough people around who spoke it. It's been pleasing to see the rise of Rust, and there is a demand for that, and that is why that is mostly either people have contributed and said I want to contribute in Rust, or it's been relevant to say, actually that's relevant to have a Rust component in terms of integration with other projects and things like that. So that has driven the rise on it. And again, it's good. It does have a good security reputation, so that is worthwhile. In terms of threat modeling, it's a little bit difficult, and that's not an excuse to say it hasn't been done, but it's a little bit difficult to say because it's a bunch of components. It is a little bit tricky at times to say, oh, does this threat apply, to a component in isolation? Or is it more to if you have a service with components A, B, C, D, and X, then you have a collection together. So it is an area that needs more work. And yes, actually, thank you for the reminder that yes, that is a maturity thing that is coming. I think we've been concentrating mostly on looking at some, the actual sort of integration testing and some of the unit testing to make sure that is mature. Yeah.
So I think there's possible mentor work to be done there. B, it's something that I'm kind of personally interested in, if you want to chat about that at some point. Sure. So it also leads me on to another question, which is that something that everyone should know about, which is that if your project is being used by anybody in production, and if anyone is selling an implementation of it anywhere, and that implementation may end up getting used in the EU, then it's probably subject to the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act. And that's a really important thing for all our projects to know about, partly because it places possible burdens on the maintainers, but probably not, more likely to be burdens on the CCC and the LF. And these are things we need to be thinking about. Now, generally, if there are no deployments, you don't need to worry at all. But as we edge towards these things, I do want everyone to be keeping aware of this, because it's really important. You're a bit of a test case, so apologies for that.
No, it's a very good thing. I'm very aware of the CRO for other reasons. But yes, I've not overlapped the Venn diagram yet.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It doesn't sound like you need to yet, but again, the sooner one thinks about it, the easier it is for everyone. At some point, Oracle would say, "Oh yeah, we want to sell this into I don't know, Estonia. Is it Estonia part of the EU? I don't know. France." And suddenly they're going to start asking questions about your policies for vulnerabilities stuff. So let's just get it ready to go. That's all.
That's an improvement. Actually, it's an improvement from last year. We have now a published vulnerability policy and things like that. So yeah,
perfect. That's great to hear. Thank you. That's all my questions, I think. Anyone else have anything?
Any other questions for Simon?
I will just mention, hi, I'll mention one thing, Simon. So since we're under CCC and the GRC SIG has published the verifier governance pattern, it would be good to see if Verizon could be sort of the standard bearer in ensuring that it can be governed per that pattern. Now, you're welcome to read the document. I'm also happy to jump on a call and sort of have a detailed conversation about what that means. Now, of course, the governance pattern is also living documents, so we may discover some changes are necessary when you actually try to implement the pattern. So that would be one. The other thing that I would love for Verizon to do, by the way, AR4SI, RC, whatever it's called, is an absolutely atrocious draft. I don't like it at all. And the one thing I don't like about it is it does not lend itself to trustworthy workload identity at all. And for anybody who is trying to do, in construction terms, old work, as in take existing 5,000 applications and uplift them, that's not an approach that can be taken. So it would be interesting.
We should also, because I've seen some stuff that I think implies that it should be go, but we'll take that offline.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, but it would be nice to see if if Verizon could be used to issue, say, Whimsy compatible identities to workloads. And again, so
actually interesting. Not on this thing because I know because it's not on the GitHub yet, but one of our research colleagues has a spiffy integration for Verizon, so that would help.
It would be lovely to see how it's done, so it's compatible with like various standards, with RATs, with Whimsy, with whatever. Because Whimsy is also has some architectural problems with confidential computing. So anyway, all of this I would love to discuss, maybe not in this forum.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I'd like to say is absolutely let's do this in this forum. Maybe not today, but Yash was talking about what things should we be bringing up generally that will make good discussion points that may be broader than just one of the SIGs, the attestation SIG or the TWI SIG, and actually having them here with a broader group of people is a good place to have that conversation. So I'm not saying we can do it right now, but actually I'm quite in favor, I think, as long as Yash and Dan are, of having exactly these sorts of high-level architectural or, broader conversations, because we're going to get the best group of people to look at all of these bits and pieces. So yes, let's do that at some point. Yash looks like he's there. The other thing I was going to say is I'd like to introduce Mark Novak, who people may not know because JPMC is a new member as of earlier this week or last week. So congratulations to such a new member. And it's really good to have a new face here, Mark.
Yes, and also noted that it from me initiating the process to us completing it took about 5 months. So if you're dealing with the bank and you send me messages, you know who you are, saying, hurry up, my answer is always hurry up and wait. Things take forever.
We have you now, so that's fantastic news. Thank you very much indeed.
That is awesome. Right. Okay. So thank you.
I think we just accept Verizon's thing. We don't need to do anything else at this point. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Simon, and Thomas and everyone else involved, of course. Really great.
Okay, so what Dan likes to do and what we've agreed in the TAC is for every project review, we'll go over these questions in case you haven't covered them in your presentation. And I had this open while you were going through the slides, and you did touch on all of them. And one of the questions that I had, which Mike also brought up, is Verizon is probably one of our most active projects in the CCC, but it's still in the sandbox stage. So yeah, it could be a good candidate next year whenever the community is ready to be moved to the graduation stage.
And we don't need to do it it doesn't need to wait for the next year. If it looks like it needs to be heading earlier than that, we can absolutely find a way to shepherd it through, and I'd very much welcome that. So don't feel you need to wait.
Right. So to kind of complete the annual review, we will go over the list of questions, just make sure that they were all covered by your presentation. The first one was whether there have been any changes to the technical charter, or if anything has changed in how the project works with the open source community, so license changes or any other sort of changes, but I don't think there have been any. The second is the project progression status, which we just discussed. The third is any budget allocations. So outside of the mentorship work, which again comes from a separate pool because it comes from the LFX mentorship program. Is Verizon getting the required help when it comes to, say, infrastructure or resources or travel? Are you happy with your interactions with the CCC there?
I think there was some delay sorting out some of the details of the mentorship. Thomas can comment more on that, on things like that. Otherwise, in the lack of budget consumption is down to us, not CCC problems. Certainly, we've used budget in the past, and so very happily.
So, I mean, I think talking about those sorts of things, this is, given the size of the project, there aren't many of them within the CCC where we could say, would it be helpful to do things like organize a hackathon at an EU or a North American Linux Foundation event like Open Source Summit or something like that? So I think, again, let's start thinking about those sorts of things, if that would be helpful for the project. I think it is high profile. It's one of the things that I've been hearing over the last few months is we want more sort of standardized implementations and standards-based things that we can take to regulators and we can take to standard bodies. And this is, I think, a poster child for that. So, again, all projects, please think about this. But it feels to me, given the number of contributors, like that's something that might actually be a useful thing to do. So please consider that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mike. The next question on the list is reviewing any license changes, which I don't think there have been any, so we're all good on that. And the last one is the OpenSSF best practices batch, which you actually did mention that you were 97% last year.
No,
but
we
now
are. No. We have progressed from there. We're now.
Yes, so you progressed from that to.
Yeah.
Batching.
And
it's green
could we add to this list or put it as a possible change to this, the OpenSF baseline as well, because generally that's considered, is it a different style of thing, but for things like a vulnerability management and anything to do with the CRA, the baseline is a very good place to be starting. So can I suggest an addition to
so Mike, we actually had a discussion on TAC about adopting the OpenSSF security baselines. Emily Fox from Red Hat actually came to the TAC and presented about it. She did. But I don't think the projects particularly found it useful, so we had deferred adding it to the review process because the best practices badge is maybe enough for now, and we did not want to add another thing for the projects to do. And the feedback we had received was it might not be as beneficial right now. So
okay, that's fine. Thank you. I hadn't caught all of that. So let's have that as another conversation to have on a future TAC. Perfect. Great. Sure. Sorry to muddy the waters.
No, that's okay. All right. Okay. So thank you once again, Simon. Wonderful update. Verizon has been an excellent project, like a leader in the CCC project space. So thank you once again.
Perfect. All right. No problem.
Moving on, we have an ARM heavy agenda today. So the next topic on deck is the TAC objective review of ARM's ecosystem OKR, and that will be actually presented by Verizon's TAC liaison, Paul. So Paul's slides are actually here, so I'm just going to move to full screen. And Paul, whenever you are ready, I can advance the slides.
Sure, thanks very much. Yes, so if you could advance to the next one. So the TAC has objectives and key results that we kind of set out at the beginning of each year. Overall, our objective always is to grow our projects and our community and our ecosystem. And what I'm sharing today is one such objective, which is themed around ecosystem, and it's one that kind of has my name against it, as it were. And here's how it's stated, right? So as a kind of story, past tense, we have helped to educate developer communities on confidential computing concepts, right? So this is something that by the end of the year, we would want this to be true. And some key results there. So creating reusable software components that are available in open source, enabling developers to gain hands-on familiarity with core concepts such as attestation, which I've emboldened there for reasons that will become obvious, in a digestible and approachable way, and that presentation materials are available, documents, videos, tutorials, to provide guided walkthroughs of how to build and run demonstrations. So that's the scene setting. If we can go to the next slide, please, Yash. The focus, so most of the focus on this so far has been on attestation, and it's for these reasons, right? So first of all, as we know, it's a defining characteristic of confidential computing, which is to say you can't have confidential computing without it. Therefore, it's ubiquitous and critical. It's an important thing to understand. It's also a difficult thing to understand. It's complicated, and for some of the reasons listed here. So for one thing, it's very end-to-end. It spans multiple components with different roles and interactions, and I'll talk about those in a second. It happens at different times, such as booting from an encrypted disk or deploying an encrypted workload, delivery of data into a T, secure channel establishment, and probably others that I haven't thought of, right? So application-specific protocols and things that are gated on attestation. It's fragmented across architectures and vendors. Now that's a hard thing to navigate as it is, but also there are emerging standards and there are points of potential alignment. And we want to raise awareness, I guess, of these things and make sure that people understand how to use them and how to align to them. And then there's really just this big gulf between the conceptual overviews that do exist that you can go and read. But then the next thing is you might find yourself amid the weeds of production code or a real world open source project. And there's this big gap in the middle in terms of running code that's just simple and concise and actually designed to help you learn things. And of course, we have Verizon, which Simon's just been updating us on. And that matters, and you'll see why in a moment if we can go to the next slide, please, Yash. So if you want to understand attestation, then a good place to start is here with the RATS model. RATS is short for Remote Attestation Procedures, of course. It's maintained by the RATS working group within the IETF. And it distills attestation down to its most essential components and data flows. So it's very generic, it's very agnostic, based on these abstract roles and interactions. Doesn't have anything to say about how things are implemented concretely, and that's quite deliberate. So the goal of this architecture is to establish the common language and thought process. You can apply this model pretty much anywhere, and we find the RATS architecture at the foundation of many software stacks that are growing up around confidential computing. It takes on many guises, but fundamentally it's always there. It's the perfect anchoring point then for our quest to make attestation more comprehensible. But the thing about RATS is that it is just a model. It's not an implementation, so you can't clone it out of Git and read some docs and then go and build it and run it. But ideally, we'd like to, right? I mean, if we are engineers and we're seeking to understand something and we have itchy fingers, we want to go clone a repo and we want to go run stuff and play with it. So if we go to the next slide, Yash. So the idea is, what if we could do that? What if we could take the RATS architecture and box it up and turn it into something we can just execute in its most essential form, something with working software that sits alongside the diagram. So I've been working during the past year with some members of the Verizon community. The goals and principles of this work are listed there on the slide. So we want to create these guided end-to-end demonstrations, guided in the sense that they are easy to follow through stepwise recipes, end-to-end in the sense that they cover all of the RATS concepts to at least a basic working level, And then we want to create these guided experiences from reusable components in open source. But to make these components that are optimized for learning, right? So it's about making them small and simple to understand. So they do things at the conceptual level, rather than sort of be sprawling sort of production level things. But also to make them flexible so that they can be repurposed to showcase a variety of attestation use cases. And so aligning on Verizon as the verifier, it's the RATS verifier, as Simon was saying. It provides all of the components. It's very closely aligned with the RATS working group in the IETF. So by choosing Verizon as the single engine of verification, if you like, we immediately trim away a lot of the complexity that's typically found in some of the larger software projects that use attestation. So again, it's really just about distilling things down to bare essentials. And then, so we want convenient packaging, minimal dependencies. We want things that are easy to clone and build, just pull from container repositories. We want to avoid needing specialized hardware. So there are demos available today for the ARM Confidential Compute Architecture, or CCA, and those just run on software emulated platforms. So it's very easy, just run them on your laptop or your desktop, no matter what kind of hardware you have. Now, of course, I mentioned ARM, but everything we're creating here is architecture neutral. Verizon is an architecture neutral project. We built demos for the ARM platform, but we'd love to see these extended through contribution as well, so they can be extended to showcase other architectures and platforms. So, you know, always consider contribution rather than just listening to me. Okay, if we go to the next slide, Yash. So I thought I'd throw up an example of something we've put together. So this is something we've built according to all of those goals and principles. You can run this today. It's a straightforward demo of using attestation to control the release of some secret data into a confidential computing environment. In this case, our confidential environment is a simulated ARM CCA platform, all of which we can conveniently package as a Docker container, preloaded with the entire reference software stack for ARM CCA. But that's just a detail, right? The demo really is less about CCA and it's more about providing a comprehensible attestation flow end to end. The secret data in this case is managed by a small key broker server, which runs in a second container. It offers a very simple REST API and attestation protocol. On the right-hand side, then we have the verifier, of course, based on the Verizon project, get the pronunciation right, as we saw on the previous slide. But to make things even simpler, Linaro have also published a Verizon-based verifier service on their infrastructure, which is just sitting on the internet, right? So we can use these for demos. It's pre-initialized to work with these software emulated models. So if you've got Docker and you've got the internet, that's what you need to run a demo like this. In terms quickly of how it works, so there's a client of the key broker running in a confidential VM that's inside the T. That's just a regular user space process. It's going to request some kind of key or secret from our key broker server. The key broker server receives the request and says, no, I'm not going to release the secret. We need to do an attestation dance first. So it will send back the challenge value for the attestation. Key broker client takes the challenge, uses it to construct a signed attestation report, and it's exemplifying the common interface in Linux for config TSM reports. So the key broker client will use that and then use that interface to extract the attestation report from the system. So that's signed evidence then inclusive of the challenge value. That's then sent back to the key broker, which can forward it to the attestation verifier. But the key broker is the relying party here, right? If I didn't already say that. And we default to this one that Linaro have published, but it's a simple configuration change. If you have a Verizon instance of your own, you can easily configure the demo to use that endpoint instead. So the verifier does verification things. It'll check the signature on the attestation report, appraise the contents, It will examine all of the claims, produce an attestation result. And it's worth emphasizing at this point that all of the packets of data being transacted here are all based on data formats that are undergoing standardization in RATs. So remember, this is RATs in a box, so we're always striving to exemplify according to these emerging standards. We have a demo of how policy can then be used. We have a very simple policy document based on OPA and RAGO that can be used to base a trust decision on the contents of the attestation result. And assuming that the trust decision is favorable, then the final step is for the key broker to release that piece of secret data into the protected realm. We just display it on the console. This is a demo after all, so we want to print something that you can actually see. So our default secret will say something like, "May the force be with you," and that's what's printed on the screen if you run this demo and all of the steps work. Right, yeah, next slide please, Yash. So I've described a demo, but there was also a key result around presentation materials. One of the things we're doing inside ARM is that we're building out our learning platform at learn.arm.com. Now we are gradually building out our developer tutorials for confidential computing. We have an increasing number of these, including a guided recipe for running the Keybroker demo that I just talked about. ARM learning paths, by the way, I should say that they are open for contribution, right? So please don't think of this as like a closed platform. The content for ARM learning paths is all on GitHub. And it is possible to contribute into the learning path set. And I was fortunate earlier this year as well in terms of spreading the word. So I was fortunate to team up with Kevin Zhao of Linaro to deliver this talk for the OC3 2025 conference. We called it Attestation Everywhere, where we did publicize some of the work that I've just been talking about. And some other attestation related things as well. Well worth going to take a look at that if you happen to miss it back in March. The YouTube link is on the slide there. And Yash, could we go to the next slide, please? So are we done? Well, of course not. Nothing's ever done. So as a community, we can certainly do a lot more. Even just sticking with attestation, there are other workflows and patterns that we can exemplify. I already talked about attestation taking place at different times in these deployments, acting as different kinds of gate. So we can look at secure channel establishment, for example. So there's all this work around attested TLS. It'll be interesting to see how we can build concise and instructive demos out of that. Boot time attestation, such as for the blind hypervisor model, where the boot disk is encrypted, for example, virtual TPMs, and so on. What I'm hoping, though, is that some of the open source components that we built for that Keybroker demo that I just described could be repurposed to suit some of these other cases as well. But even when they can't, I think we should always strive to be building reusable pieces. And of course, there's not just attestation. Attestation's important, and that's been the focus for all of the reasons I set out earlier. But confidential computing is not only attestation, so maybe there are other core concepts we should be thinking about as well that we can demonstrate. I don't have all the answers, right? And I'm also not doing all of the work. So if you're interested in this area and you have ideas and you want to contribute, contribution is where it's at, right? As always. But I'm more than happy to be a conduit, right? So if you have ideas and want to approach me, in the first instance, my door is always open to talk about these things. Okay, if we go to the next slide, so yeah, I do have a bit of bonus content, and this follows on from what Simon was talking about as well. So just before I close out, so this is bonus in the sense that it relates to a different OKR from the one that I was just talking about. But it is still relevant. So we've got this separate objective which talks about aligning on protocols, such as by standardizing them in the RATS working group. And I want to share a piece of work that heads in this direction, and bring in yet more Verizon love, which is very much the theme of the day. So if you go to the next slide, Yash, thank you. In July, we had the IETF 123 hackathon and the meetings in Madrid. And one of the things we showcased there was some work towards creating more concrete standards around endorsement and reference value conveyance, particularly distribution. So myself and others have put forward an internet draft called CoServe, that stands for the Concise Selector for Endorsements and Reference Values. And we used Verizon as a way to show this in action. And I just want to call out some superhuman efforts by Thomas Fossati here, who managed to get this framework into place despite somewhat fluid specification in the months leading up to the hackathon. Now, if you've worked with Verizon, you'll know it as a verifier, of course, but it does its verifications based on endorsements that have been provisioned into it. And what we're doing here is showing that those same endorsements can also be distributed, so that the verification itself could be performed somewhere else, such as in the relying party, for instance, or on a constrained device, or somewhere where you don't have a service. And CoServe is the enabling primitive for that. So in the hackathon, we showed a CoServe HTTP front end on Verizon, and showed how it could distribute the endorsements that had been ingested into its own internal database, into its own trust anchor store and reference value store. We also used the same framework to show how existing real-world endorsement services could be proxied down to this common API and data format as well. And we took services from NVIDIA and from AMD as illustrative examples of that. But in all, we showed the feasibility, right? That having a single common API and a query language to distribute endorsements and reference values from multiple real-world supply chain sources. So yeah, there's another useful step forward, and more Verizon goodness there too. Alec, have a question?
Yeah, this is super interesting. I'm a little bit lost on distributed endorsement values. If you don't mind maybe giving a couple of examples, I'd love that. Since we're in a public cloud, I think of endorsement values as being golden values that are provided either by the cloud service provider, or maybe by the hardware vendor, or maybe the firmware vendor that make up the T. That's my only concept for endorsement values. It's a cert that we get from the CPU provider. It's a signature that we get from the firmware provider, and it's our own, special sauce that we know about our own infrastructure. And we compare those against the values that are provided by the verifier, and we either attest or not. I don't understand the distributed thing. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, to begin with, I mean, everything you said in terms of what endorsements and reference values are is absolutely right. But and a verifier needs these things, right? If the verifier has received evidence, you can't verify that in a vacuum, right? You need the endorsements; those need to have come from somewhere. Now, if the verifier is a cloud service, and its sort of front-end API is a verification API, then endorsements don't necessarily need to be distributed out from that, right? They can be ingested in instead and then just stored locally and then used. But the idea here is to, if you like, cope with situations where there is a disassociation between where the endorsements are produced and where they are consumed, and to actually have a public API in that conveyance as well. And if you want examples of where that already exists, the two that I have on the slide there, so NVIDIA have a RIM service, and AMD have a key distribution service. Both of those are public APIs, but they are proprietary. They don't follow a standard as such. Well, it depends what data you're getting out of them. Of course, if you're getting X509 certificates out, then of course that is a standard. But in terms of the interaction and the API, it's creating a more concrete standard around that, so that the more vendors in the supply chain that are publishing these things, the easier it is for them to publish them to a common pattern, so that we can write a small number of software libraries that then just know how to go and get them from the world, rather than having to write 10 or 20 different ones.
Got it. That helped a lot. Thanks a million. And I get it. And that key distribution service from AMD, I'm assuming that Intel has a very similar service that distributes their certs as well.
Yes, I'm sure. I mean, the two examples that we took to the hackathon were designed to be illustrative, certainly not exhaustive. There was a particular reason why we chose those two, actually, because they stretched us and kept us honest, in terms of having an abstraction that is valuable. Those two services work quite differently, and they're giving out very different artifacts. One of them is like firmware RIM measurements. The other is endorsement certs for CPUs, right? So they're very different. Some of them need like stateful environment to be taken account of as well. AMD, for example, their certs actually change because the attestation key changes depending on components in the TCB. So that was quite challenging to make sure that with a common abstraction we could cope with that kind of thing, as well. So that's why we chose those two. Yes, there are others, and there will be more, right? So as attestation footprint grows in the ecosystem, the number of these things will increase, and hence the value of having a standard, I think, is enhanced.
Got it. Thanks a million. That really cleared it up for me. Appreciate it, Paul.
Oh, sure, no worries. I just have one more slide, I think, Yash. And it is just to learn more on this. So if you are interested in this endorsement standardization effort, the CoServe IETF draft is just an individual draft at the moment. We are currently waiting on a decision as to whether the RATS working group will adopt. We have put it forward for adoption, but the consensus on adoption is still being evaluated. If you want a deeper dive on CoServe, there's also an attestation SIG presentation on YouTube there. And if you actually want to go and dive into the code, there is a CoServe dev branch on the Verizon Services repo, which contains the implementation that I showed in the previous diagram. And I think that brings me to the end of my content.
Yes, that was an excellent update. Thank you so much, Paul. So for other members on the call, this is a great example of an OKR update that members are expected to give. So, thank you once again, Paul. This was a wonderful update. You covered everything, and you actually touched on two of the objectives that the CCC has, we had set out at the beginning of the year. So thank you once again.
No problem. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Paul before I move on to the last topic of the day? Second last. Right. We've lost a couple of people at the top of the hour, so I'm assuming people had conflicts. That's okay. Right. Which brings us to the next topic of discussion, which is the research fund proposal by TikTok. Ming-Shen had sent out this proposal. I think Dan did bring it up on the 7th August call as well, but it had yet to be proposed to the governing board back then. I thought I had the proposal open here. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat for people who don't have this. And so Ming-Shen is on the call. Yes. So I'll have Ming-Shen talk about this first, and then maybe Mike can give an update on the board's response or the summary of discussion. Okay. So Ming-Shen?
Yeah. I think early this year, we also set the OKR to support the academic community on the confidential computing research. So we internally we have a discussion thinking that directly sponsor some of the research project is the best way. Yeah, we discuss candidates like giving out some credits, crowd credits to the academic community. But overall, I think the research sponsorship or research fund is the um, best way because we discuss with professors and I think this is a general way they accept the funds from companies and organizations. So I did a study on the current ongoing project within Linux Foundation, similar like this. We found that the EBPF Foundation have similar research fund projects last year and this year as well. So we consulted the technical members from EBPF and they thought the last year fund program went very well, and there are at least 5 projects got sponsored and deliver some of the publications and also open source contributions. So that's why we came up the proposal and first, we proposed in the governing board meeting on this because it need to set up the research fund, and we need to agree on some of the funding source and how much we need to spend on the particular projects. And then and we borrowed the EBPF call for proposal materials. So here you see most of the terms, requirements, eligibility are from EBPF's research fund. So I think Dan and Mike came up with these docs to also put some of the topics in confidential computing, especially I think for as for research topics in the first page, a lot of topics, but our goal is to call for proposals from different professors from universities and then select 1 or 2 projects and give fundings to them and help them to work on the top specific topics. Other than that, I think, yeah, expected outcome. Uh, we discussed that we don't want to put a lot of like expectation to the professor because overall this is a um, research fund to foster the research. So we cannot expect any specific outcome. So so that's a general outcome we are expecting, publications of the research findings to the public forum of the open source code, or some of the contribution to the open source project in CCC, for example. And also, I comments on the doc, the members of TAC can offer mentorship or consultant service to the recipients if they are willing to hear some of the industry challenges, or they want to hear some best practice as well. So that's the some of the expected outcome of this project. Other than that, I think all the logistics follow the EBPF Foundation's project.
Yeah, you've covered that very well, Ming-Sheng. Thank you. As Ming-Sheng said, we are following the lead of the EBPF, which means that the sort of legal complications have basically all been performed for us once before, so we can borrow/steal/copy the processes for that, which is fantastic news. A few things. Firstly, hopefully the recipients of this research will present to the TAC and, all those sorts of things. Secondly, it would be nice if on some of the occasions that they might end up being contributors to some of our open source projects, maybe even Veration. Third, there's opportunities, as Ming Shen said too, to mentor and sponsor these folks, and maybe in the future, for member companies to employ them as well. And so I think that, all in all, this is a really fantastic idea. We need two things from you and from your companies, please. Firstly, could you scroll up, whoever's in charge of this? I don't know who's in charge at the moment. As Ming Shen said, to the list of topics. Yeah, as Ming Shen said, there's a lot of topics here. Basically, Dan and I wrote down all the things we thought were interesting that might be relevant. Please add more things, and please note things which you think should be taken away. I want this to be representative, but on the other hand, it's really quite big at the moment. And if we can reduce that, it may be helpful. Or maybe say, for this tranche, the first tranche, this. But on the other hand, we don't need to. We could just see what research proposals come in. So there's actually three things we need. Sorry. Second thing is, TikTok have kindly said that they are happy to provide a sponsorship for the first round, but we absolutely would love other companies to be providing some of the fund as well. It doesn't need to be a huge amount. As you see, we're looking at rewards from sort of 25 to 50K. So even if you, put forward 25, 50K, that would certainly be helpful. And it doesn't need to be in this quarter. So lots of companies are going through their budget processes now. And it may be that, your company has a fund that it puts aside for academic work. And this is a great way to make sure that some of it comes in a direction that you care about. Fritz, you had a question. Let me stop and I'll answer that before I've gone to try to answer that for my next thing.
No, less of a question. I just wanted to kind of start a discussion in that direction as well. So I want to, before I will start to sound very negative, I want to start saying that this is a great idea, and I like the grant, and I think it's great. I think we need it. It's great. I just want to exactly shape the discussion to this direction of what's actually the research criteria, like the selection criteria, what's the scope, and kind of what is the thing you want to achieve here. Because if you keep this list like this and keep growing it, there's like multiple ways this can go, right? It could go great. Awesome, that's cool. But you can also, you might just end up with one of the big academic institutions writing a nicely sounding proposal that will just end up in them taking the money into their already big research fund and just telling you, yeah, look, we have this one publication that we totally wouldn't have done otherwise, believe us. And then, sure, that's great, and you're funded academia, I'm all for it. But that may not be what you want, right? And then the third thing is looking at this list and knowing quite a lot of academics. What if you have 500 applications? Like, is that what you want to do? Do you want to go through all of them and then just by random roll the dice which you want to take, or what's your idea here? And I don't think you will be able to convince people to review 500 applications and pick kind of like and rate them, right? You have to do some filtering.
And you've recently come out of academia. It's not that long ago, so you're in a position of knowledge here. This is great. Okay,
yes.
So maybe
I'm happy to help, but that's the point, right? But
yeah,
you have to really
this is great.
Carefully define what you want to do.
Maybe the first thing we need to do is, as you say, define what we'll do. And I think the answer is we want to do things that will move the bar forward in terms of confidential computing and help it be adopted in the future. I know that's kind of a fuzzy thing, but it is kind of true. We may say, for the first tranche, we want to identify things in this particular area, and that's an entirely appropriate thing to do. And so as I said, we need people to go through this and to filter it. So, which brings me to my last thing I was going to ask, which is that we're going to need volunteers. We need volunteers for a program committee. And yeah, it's not going to be 500. If we do 500, then the job has been done badly in the set before that, right? Which is in the step before that. let me just give you an idea of what we're thinking of for the rules of for the makeup of that committee. Okay, the first thing is we think that anybody from a general member or a startup member or a premium member can be on that program committee, but we think probably not associate members because they are themselves research, and we wouldn't want there to be anything that felt dodgy on that, right? Many of them. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we think probably that having the TAC chair or a deputy of the TAC chair at their discretion being on that committee makes sense. And thirdly, we don't want more than one member per, oh, there's four actually. We don't want more than one member per company or group of companies. So, having 3 people from Red Hat is a no-no, for instance. And having, actually, it's a bit awkward because you, Fritz, and Dan, you'd have to work out how to sort that out. So that's the kind of thinking. We might just say the TAC chair is different. We have to decide that. And the last thing is that any companies that have put money into the pot for that particular round should be allowed to have a member on the program committee if they wish. They obviously, that's not about giving them power over everything, but they should have a say in it. So I would expect that TikTok, for this tranche at least, would be one of the members of that program committee if they wish. So that's our thinking about what that committee looks like. And we are at the stage now where we want to get this defined. So I'd like to lay it open for discussion, taking particularly Fritz's thoughts into mind and say, what do we want to do next? Yash, do you want to? This is your meeting, so please tell me how you want to run this.
Yeah. So my question to Ming-Shen was going to be the same. Like, what do you expect the TAC members to do? Like, what kind of input is required from the TAC members, and then from the governing board? So, question to Mike would be, what are the next steps? Like, okay, this is approved now.
The governing board has approved this.
Okay.
We are just working out how to get the money into the fund, which we hope to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And once we've done that, we need to get a committee together from the TAC, and then publish what we want people to do, and then hope that we get a good number, but not too many requests for funding.
I actually agree with Fritz here. Like, what the TAC should be focusing on is focusing on the impact from this fund, and so it's not about, I would say, the quantity of applications or the quantity of topics, but it's more about the quality of who gets to contribute, and how is that research furthering or accelerating adoption of confidential computing. If we can make it, if we can have an academic team or a university working on contributing to a CCC project or an area that we don't currently cover, that could be in the kernel, it could be in the workload identity space. If we could have research in that space, that would be my motivation. But again, I'm not from an academic background the way that Fritz is. So yeah, that would
I
be
think it's also worth asking, Ming-Shen, what some of their thoughts from TikTok were about setting up the fund. Ming-Shen, do you want to contribute thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with Yash. I think the main goal should align with the CCC to accelerate adoption of confidential computing. So I understand from Fritz's point of view, the list of the topics too many, and
that's my fault.
It's fine. But overall, we can form the program committee to polish this. I think that's pretty much. I think one thing, yes, probably this is important. Is a timeline. We plan to form this program committee like within 1 or 2 weeks, and then start discussion on the specific like selection criteria and how to publish this cover proposal and promote it, and then at least wait for 1 month on the proposal submission, and then do the selection process, probably 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, then announce the recipients. So the announcement probably will be in the around November or December, and then the fund transfer from Lynch Foundation to the professor. Then I think next year or the end of this year, these projects start going, and we can somehow oversee or monitoring the progress. And then this is like half-year projects, and they came back and present some of the research outputs.
Mona's had her hand up very patiently.
It took me a while to find how to raise the hand here. Anyway, so first of all, I'm really happy to see this. Thanks, Ming-Shen and everyone else who's been. I didn't realize it. I just actually showed up, and turns out the topic is very relevant. So several of you know, Intel has actually done this for a really long time. And we have, that's why you've seen like this long list of research on SGX. And of course, we're seeing this research on TDX, SCV, and I guess NVIDIA GPUs as well. But it's relatively slow. By the way, at Intel, we are still funding. So I have a center which we're calling Trustworthy Data Center of the Future, which is really focused on adoption of confidential computing in a disaggregated data center. Think Nitro like environments, right? But I think I agree with you guys. This is just too broad. And then we all need to think what are our biggest challenges, right? Then literally list 3 or 4, and each company maybe gets to list one big challenge they think we should go after researching. Otherwise, this is literally, this is just too big. So I'm happy to help.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mona. So could we start taking a list of people who said they might be interested? Because this looks fantastic. I would say this was just an example list of stuff that I think is interesting. It wasn't supposed to be a representative list. It was just here's some stuff that Dan and I think are interesting, and we should pick from this. There's no intention that this should be the starting point even, right? So it's just an example. So please don't feel that anyone's going to be upset if we remove or add, mainly remove from this list. And I think, maybe having a theme, every 6 months or so might be one way of doing it, but we don't have to. And I think that's, getting a group together is good. So Fritz, Mona, Mike, Ming-Shen, Dan, all possible folks. Thank you, Mona. It's really, really great. Is there anyone else who has a pressing desire to get involved? Because it would be great to get some more lists. That's Caroline from Microsoft, aren't you, Caroline?
Yes, for Microsoft.
Thank you. So we should definitely put this on the TAC list as well as a specific question, and also in the Slack. But we have enough people right there to start things off. Ming-Shen, I think you'll be pleased to hear. So that's a really good start. But I don't need to be on it, but I'm interested. As I said, we need to work out exactly what the rules for representation are. The ones I suggested are suggestions only. But if we're happy with that, I think it's one of the things that we should agree as a set of people to take to the TAC for voting on for those rules. Maybe we'll look into it, but I think this is a really good start.
I think another good set of people to be included would be the chairs of the attestation SIG and the compliance SIG. So Mark and then
Keith. Let's put them down, see if they're interested. Yep, absolutely agree.
And
Colonel SIG
and Colonel SIG. So I'm just going to put SIG chairs. So the way that I'm approaching this is like if the proposals could mention specific projects or work that we are actually actively pursuing in the TAC or in the SIG right now, that'd be good. This is actually how we got one of the mentorships for the Certified Framework project. Like there was work happening in a lab in the University of Missouri, but they did not have funding for the student to continue the work on the Certified Framework project, and we were able to set up a Linux Foundation mentorship, which is actually a very fair way for the student to contribute to Certified framework because the university couldn't, and it's still an open source project. I think that would be a good way. Like if you could mention particular projects or work actively being pursued, but we don't have, say, the members don't have the bandwidth to look at it, we could reach out to people in the academic space. So yes, we will continue the discussion. I'll send out an email with the minutes, and once Dan is back, then he can also.
Great.
Mingshen,
so as Mingshen said, we want to move fairly quickly. Oh, Mingshen, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to note that we need to differentiate the research program and the mentorship program.
Yes.
I think mentorship program is mainly for a specific task on the open source projects, mostly engineering task, and the research program focus on the novelty of the research. And yeah, we need to distinguish these two because we also have a mentorship program in CCC as well.
Yeah, I was just using it as an example. I agree. Yeah.
Of course.
I'm writing some notes.
Any other discussion or questions on the research proposal? I think we have a good set of next steps because, yeah, we've identified the people, we need to reduce the topic list, and then we can vote on it on the TAC. Yeah.
Just maybe one small one to set the scene.
Yes,
maybe it might sound a little bit mean, but for the very kind of like large or good and well-funded research groups, 25 to 50K is not a lot, right? In the end, it funds you a PhD for like half a year to a year if we have 50K. So I think we'll have to make the choice whether this is going, like the target is going to be less funded research groups, which is a totally fine group to target, or to have kind of these like really high impact style research outputs, and then the quality of proposals we get will also rely on what amount of paperwork we require from the people, right? Because you can tell a professor that is already well funded, hey, we give you 25K, but you have to attend our meetings every week and do all of this paperwork.
Yeah, so we're setting a low bar. We have some experience from the eBPF one, but your point about the amount is well made. Mingshen, do you have any insight into where the numbers 25 to 50K came from? Was that experience from the eBPF fund?
I think eBPF, yeah, they start with this range, but last time, I think the chair, the eBPF research fund chair told us that they finally decided to give 50 to every projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can't.
So I mean,
50 decide a single number, like now the range. So
yeah. And don't get me wrong here, right? Like it's like any money is great, but it's just to kind of be aware of the context of kind of what money is a lot in academia, right? And
yeah,
like there, I think this is, I mean, India is kind of like roughly one PhD for a year, right? That's not going to be like a big team that you can fund with this. So that's also the context.
And I think that's the expectation. But the other thing, of course, is that the way to give more money, the way is to have more money in the pot. So if NVIDIA, I believe NVIDIA has very little money. So, you might want to say, maybe a little bit. Anyway, no, I don't mean that to anyone. Any company would love to have funding for small amounts or large amounts. It all goes into the same pot, and that's part of the joy of it, right? That it benefits everybody.
And I also propose to change this as a like research awards, something like that. So it's not like a funding program. So it's a recognition from the community.
We may need to be careful about what the Linux Foundation is happy to call it. I think that it may need to be called a fund because that is the legal method being used to find it's dull stuff like that. I did see that, but I think we may need to be careful. We can ask. We can ask.
Okay, so my point is, 100K is not a good amount of money for sponsoring a research project, the whole lifetime of a research project.
Yeah.
But I think this is some kind of recognition, endorsement from the community, saying this is a potential opportunity. Yeah.
So I think probably what is meant here is this is our fund, which can be used to give grants. It's not about funding. It's a fund that we, the CCC, have from which out of which comes grants. I think that's the
got your point. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, excellent. So again, once again, thank you, Ming-Shen, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Fritz, Mona, for the discussion.
And Caroline for stepping forward too. Thank you, everyone.
And the people who stepped up. So thank you so much. We have lost more than half of the crowd, but there is still a good number here. Actually, that was the last topic for today. I will quickly go over what to expect in the coming TAC calls for the rest of the year. So we don't have any topics on schedule for next call. The only project review remaining for the rest of the year is the ILET project, and that's scheduled for the 30th of October. We have 2 TAC calls before that where we don't have a project topic. So what Dan had actually recommended, I think it's here for future businesses, he had proposed something like rotating co-leads. So the way Paul stepped up, gave us a very great OKR update today. We would have more Premier members give, or each Premier member give their OKR update that they had agreed to at the beginning of the year. So actually, today was supposed to be AMD's turn. He just went alphabetically, so AMD came first, but Nathaniel is out on PTO, so it could be his turn or it could be Google's turn. Next week, we'll, again, once Dan is back, we'll send an email maybe early next week to confirm whose turn is it to give their OKR update. And because we don't have a TAC review or a tech talk scheduled, then the discussion about workload identity that Mark was going to bring to the GRC SIG, we can bring it
Can I suggest a couple of other things as well, actually?
Yes, yes, Mike.
Yeah, so one is, it's kind of broader than that. One of that is a composite attestation. And maybe getting someone from the attestation SIG to present where they are on their thinking there, and if that's something that we should be looking at more in a broader set of people, best because we have more people come to that. So that's one thing. Yes, what you mentioned as well from there. The other thing is that a number of people have said to me that they or their company would be interested in having a confidential computing for AI SIG starting up. And what does that mean? Who's interested in it? Could we put together a statement of for a SIG that makes sense for that? I know that it would have great visibility, but is it a sensible thing to be doing? I'd love to have a conversation about that. And I don't want to have it now because I do want to have it in the agenda so that people know that they should come to it. So is your company interested? What would it do? What particular problems are there we need to be addressing? Those sorts of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I thought.
So
I'll be honest,
dedicated GRC topic wasn't what I had in mind, just so you know. It was.
Yeah. I had just put it down. We can
okay, fine.
Change it. Yeah.
Yeah, fine. It was the composite attestation and the what was the thing Mark said? That wasn't. Was it a GRC topic? Oh, okay. Sorry. Right. Yeah, I see what you mean. Sorry.
That's okay. I can go back in the recording and add it later.
Okay.
This is just for.
Again, these
make
are
sure
just
we
things
don't
I'm
miss
interested
anything.
in because people have raised them with me. If anyone has any other things, I'd love to. This is not about my being special. It's just my trying to react to the questions I get from members and potential members. I should be clear.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah, so even in conversations that I've had with Red Hat customers or OpenShift customers who are looking at confidential computing, I would say more than half of them have been interested in some sort of confidential AI or confidential inferencing. So yes, this would be a good SIG or for the CCC to be looking into. Absolutely. There was another thing that I wanted to bring up at the TAC call, although we don't have everybody here, is there was a GRC SIG call yesterday that only had 2 people attending, so the call had to be cancelled. And then Mark sent an email saying, if there are no more topics for the SIG, then maybe the SIG needs to go away, which is again something the TAC needs to address. Not that it's the TAC's responsibility to attend all the SIG calls, but we do need to keep updating ourselves with where what kind of SIGs the industry needs. So maybe like Mike, you mentioned, maybe there is an interest in confidential AI, like that's a SIG that could be well attended, then that is something that we should be looking into. I know the attestation SIG calls are always well attended. The TAC calls are also well attended when we have them. So these are topics that we should be bringing. And yeah, once Dan is back, I will make sure that these topics are added to at least the next 2 calls. Because we don't have any tech talks or reviews, we do have the entire 2-hour window. And yeah, we have more than enough time to bring all of these topics.
Yeah, one thing we should also be aware of is that both the agendas and the recordings of most of our meetings are available online. And I know that people do use that. I mean, I certainly do. If I've missed a meeting, just because people aren't necessarily able to attend, but it may be for time zone, for other reasons, doesn't mean there's not an interest in it. Obviously, that it's not an indication that there is, that people aren't there, but we should keep an eye out for that as well, and be aware that not everyone can consume meetings in person, as it were.
I want to add to that a little bit that just because a meeting is currently not well attended doesn't mean it's not an important SIG to maintain as a general thing. For example, like the governance that Mark is leading, I think that's great. I actually dropped the C, but I think it's a great thing to have. I just have the feeling that it's a little bit early for most companies to talk about this, but it will come, right? So maybe even if there's kind of low attendance, maintaining the SIG as an entity, but like lowering the schedule or something could be the solution.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing. Every 3 or 4 weeks rather than every 2 weeks is absolutely an option. Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you.
So I see Chris has put it in chat, like maybe the intersection of new research and AI, crypto areas like multi-party secure competition and CC could be interesting.
Okay, so there's an interesting thing there, which is that there's a possible piece of work going on to establish a new initiative within the CCC, which is it's taking a bit of time to get itself together, which we call the PET initiative, which we have discussed before here, I think, certainly in the GB, which is an opportunity for projects and research about combining different types of PET, including confidential computing. So I try to attend those meetings when I'm able to. There's one, I think, in an hour's time, just over an hour's time.
Is that within the CCC or within the Linux Foundation?
No, it's not within the CCC. Well, it hasn't been
Linux
founded
Foundation,
yet.
right?
It's, the plan is to create it within the Linux Foundation. That's right. Yeah. And so TikTok and others have been involved with making that happen. It's taking a bit of time for a variety of reasons, but I think there is a fair amount of interest in it. We talked about it in the GB a couple of months ago, and generally people were in favour of supporting it. We see it as complementary to our work rather than separate, because in very few cases will people be using just one technology to secure their capabilities. And so understanding how they all fit together, best practices, some reference architectures, some design patterns, that certainly seems to make sense. So if you're interested in that, Chris, that may well be a good place to do it. But we should continue talking about these things here as well. And maybe when that's set up, there'll be opportunities for cross-pollination. That's certainly the hope of the people setting it up, and me as well. Ming Shen, again, do you want to add anything to that? I'll keep calling on you. I apologize, but you know lots about this.
Yes, I can give a little bit of background of the PET initiative we are planning. So now CCC mainly focus on the confidential computing technologies and privacy domain. PET covers confidential computing technologies, and it also mentioned other technologies, things like data anonymization, pseudonymization technologies, differential privacy, and apply crypto as well, like secure multi-party computation mentioned by Chris, and further learning. Those kind of technologies is related with confidential computing, but separate thing. So that's why PET initiative is a parallel organization under Linux Foundation, so we can discuss specific technology in that initiative, and of course there are intersection with confidential computing, and combining different PET is also a very important in like topics when applying in the privacy domain. So yeah, that's a little bit background, but we still working. This organization is still work in progress. If any companies are interested in join the discussion, so you're very welcome. And we really need some of the supporting companies to launch this project and run as similar as CCC to discuss PET.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ming-Shen. All right,
You thought we were going to go very short, didn't you?
Yeah,
you
I thought sure. We almost used the entire time. Okay, we are down to the final 10 people, but that's the end of the agenda for today. Thank you, all of you, for staying late. And yeah, we had a very good project review. We had a very good OKR update. We had a very good discussion with the research fund. We've identified next steps, and I think we have topics identified for the TAC call in 2 weeks' time. And we'll have hopefully Dan back then. By then, if not, I'm still here. So again, thank you very much. This was a wonderful call, and see everyone in 2